Well, hello, my wonderful broskis and broskas of the Maverick Nation, and welcome to some more What If Free with myself, the Dark Shadow Maverick. Yes, now it is time for more parts of What If Izuku Midoriya was the reincarnation of ulquiorra Cipher. Now, you guys may be wondering, what is there left to do? I mean, come on. What really is there left to do? That is, those of you who don't know about the whole overhaul thing. We basically have the whole, basically Shigaraki and Overhaul would have like their own little discussion, and Shigaraki would end up being like, he'll think on it. He'll think on, let's say in this, I don't know if this is actually canon at all, but let's say in this, like, Shigaraki being his, like Overhaul's boss. I think it's in canon, but, I'm not that sure. But I think in canon, Shigaraki was, like, Overhaul's boss. Anyways, like, Shigaraki's just, like, I'll think it over. And then just, like, during the middle of the night, like, while Shigaraki's trying to sleep, he hears some sort of weird voice. Like he doesn't really know what's going on. And he just hears the voice say, that Overhaul, he's no good. And then he hears someone else say, yeah, you're right, he's no good. And then Shigaraki would just be like, the hell? And then one of the voices would be like, Lynette, don't try to spook him so much next time. And then one of the voices would just be like, sorry about that, mister. But it seems after your several interactions with that one, kid, you sort of gain companions. And, well, I think that's kind of a good thing. After all, me and Stark have never liked being alone. And basically, like, Shigaraki would be like, Stark? And then one of the voices would be like, yeah, Coyote Stark and Lynette Gingerback. And Shigaraki would be like, you're Stark, and you're Lynette. I have two voices in my head? And Lynette would be like, well, technically, me and Stark used to be one being. Yet Stark kind of ripped part of his soul out, and that's how I sort of came into existence. He was that lonely. And Stark would just be like, well, you don't have to admit it in front of everyone we see. And Shigaraki would be like, so, you're a loner? That's just great. A loner and his lolly. Stuck in my head. maybe I really will take that overhaul on his offer. And Stark is just like, you really shouldn't, unless you have a plan. And this actually gets Shigaraki kind of interested, and he's just like, why exactly do you not trust Overhaul? And Lilinet would just fire back with, why do you trust him at all? I mean, you see the way he acts. His minions don't respect him out of actual respect. They respect him out of fear. And the League of Villains, I don't think was ever really that bad. And Stark is just like, well, yeah. Hate or love to admit it, I don't know, but you and your buddies really were never as bad as this Overhaul guy. Whatever you do, Shigaraki, just watch what you're doing around him. He doesn't seem trustworthy. And considering in this, Izuku is part of Endeavor's agency. Endeavor, he would kind of eventually pick up on some criminal happenings. And it would, be Overhaul being his overhaulness. And he overhauling his minions. Izuku would just be like, well, I think we have good enough trust with each other to at least have some free space. And Ulquiorra would be like, really? You don't think I would trust you? And Izuku would just be like, well, seeing how you've been over this past few times. And Ulquiorra would just be like, okay, fine, I admit. I've been a little estranged, I guess you could say. But as a little bit of something, fine. Izuku Midoriya, I now trust you with my powers. And Izuku would just feel this massive wave of strength and power and all of this other different shit just flow straight through him. And he would just be like, thank you, Ulquiorra. Thank you. And Ulquiorra's like, no, thank you, Izuku. Thank you. And Izuku would kind of know what he means. And he'd just be like, well, I better notify Nelly L before I do anything. Endeavor's agency. And Tia would just be right next to him and they wouldn't notice. And Tia would just be like, yeah, that would probably be a good thing. And they'd just be like, what the shit? Don't ever do that again, Tia. Jesus Christ. And so they would inform Nelliel about the whole thing that they had spotted a new villain and his cronies, and they would go out and try to fix that. And Nelliel would be just like, okay, just don't get too hurt or hurt at all, really. And Ulquiorra would just be like, we should probably do what she says and, be serious about this. We don't even know who this Overhaul guy is or what powers he has. And, Izuku would just be like, well, I at least hope you would have trusted me, without having to go all over protective parent about your own powers. And Ulquiorra was like, trust me, Izuku, I say these things for a reason. Izuku would just be like, okay, I guess I can trust you on that. And, Overhaul would just see Izuku, like, flying in, and he would just be like, damn, looks like some heroes have spotted us. Like, the minions would try to go after, but, Endeavor's other heroes that have basically signed on to his agency would kind of snuff them out, while Izuku kind of went straight for Endeavor. I mean, not Endeavor, freaking Overhaul. Shit. Damn it. Like, Izuku would go straight for Overhaul, and he would just beat the crap out of him, until eventually Shigaraki just appeared out of nowhere. Nowhere. And, like, even Ulquiorra would be surprised, like, holy shit. And, like, Ulquiorra would be like, I remember this. This spiritual pressure. Primera Espada. And, like, Izuku would be like, Primera Espada? Yes. Primera Espada. And his only fraction. The Primera Espada, Coyote Stark, and his only fraction, Lynette Gingerbuck. Lynette was actually once a part of Stark. And they confused together again in order to create their Resurrection Los Lobos. Though Stark doesn't really like to do that. And I wouldn't really put it against him, considering Lynette isn't all that cooperative whenever they enter the form. And Izuku would just be like, interesting. I guess that's a little something for whenever I go up against him. And Ulquiorra would just be like, what, Shigaraki with Coyote Stark and Lynette Gingerbuck's powers? And you want to go up against him? And Izuku would just be like, and Overhaul. I mean, don't forget Overhaul, he's still there. And Ulquiorra was just like, are you sure you're not losing it a little, Izuku? And Izuku, inside of his own head, would just be like, what do you mean losing it? I'm not losing it to anything. I'm my own person. I I I am perfectly fine. And Ulquiorra kind of realizes something. Like, Izuku's kind of giving in to his inner hollow. Like the instinct, the killer instinct. Like all of this want to kill and just eat. Like, seeing as Ulquiorra is a part of him, and Ulquiorra is a hollow, the whole killing and eating thing would sort of eventually come up. And, whenever a person is a first, like, time as a hollow, like, that's pretty much all they're thinking. Like, eventually, whenever they do get into that position, is kill and eat. And eventually, like, Ulquiorra didn't want this to happen, but eventually, like, whenever he did, like, Ulquiorra is just like, no, no, why? Why did this have to happen? And it's just like, as soon as he trusted Izuku with his powers, all of like the hollow Ryatsu just flooded his body, and he regressed to the hollow state. And so now all he's wanting to do is just to kill and just to eat. So now he's just wanting to kill Overhaul and to kill Shigaraki, which would mean he would also kill Stark and Lillinet, and, just eat them. He literally says that's what he's going to do. And freaking Endeavor and, like, Shoto they're right there and, like, right in front of them. That's what he says he's going to do. He doesn't care, like, whoever knows. He doesn't care. He's going to kill them, and then he's going to eat them. Is literally what he's saying to them. And, Overhaul doesn't really, like, think of Izuku as an actual threat. That is, until, he starts whipping out the Hollow Getsugas. The Hollow Getsuga? Yeah, Overhaul. Shigaraki is just like, you insolent thought. And, he does the thing where he decays his hands. Shigaraki still does that. And he's just like, you insolent child. And, Izuku is in full blust mode. He's, like, in full, like, bloodlust mode. And he just, like, goes straight at them. And he's just like, Stark, do you have any ideas? And he's just like, even though I hate this, Lillinet, are you ready? And Lillinet's just like, I thought you'd never ask. Los Lobos? And Stark is like, Los Lobos. And just fuses together, and they're just like, Cero Meteoritos. And just consumes Izuku. And he's just out cold. And, Shigaraki just grabs Izuku, and, he's like, Kirogiri, warp please. And, like, ulquiorra is yelling in Izuku's head, no, wake up, wake up. And, like, he doesn't care about, like, the hollow bloodlust. He literally is, like, afraid for both their lives, like, what will happen, like, what the villains will do to them. Like, he's really afraid. But that is where I'm going to end this off. So, Alonzi and Adassus. The Dark Side of Maverick is out.